The air in this reclaimed substation hums, thick with ozone and the ghost of hot metal. A single neon tube, the color of an old wound, casts long shadows across hand-labeled vinyl. Below the console, patched cables snake like dormant veins, smelling faintly of capacitor burn and cold coffee. Outside, the city murmurs through a mist, a low, constant breathing against the glass.
Black Star Pirate Radio.
In Westminster, we're reading 55 degrees Fahrenheit with clear. Airflow is west-southwest at about 9 miles per hour. Westminster, clear at 55 Fahrenheit, airflow west-southwest at 9 miles per hour. A clean current for designing our own compass. Here on TogeeVision, we're mapping the architectures that shape us, inside and out.
Indeed, we're looking at structures, not just surfaces. Case in point, Belfast's Sudanese community is navigating new territory.
Belfast's Sudanese community faces a double blow. A grisly attack shakes their safety, while a new policy threatens their stability.
The tragic stabbing of Hassan al-Bashir, 47, near City Hall last week has deeply unsettled the over 300 Sudanese families in Falls Road. In this climate, the Belfast City Council's Community Integration Policy 3D now reallocates critical emergency housing funds, directly impacting the processing of 87 new family registrations who sought refuge after the violence.
This attack, followed by the policy, isn't just a procedural shift, it's a profound cultural rupture. It mirrors historical patterns where vulnerable communities, already reeling from external threats, face internal systemic barriers. It leaves families, like those who might have shared a meal with Hassan, feeling adrift, their sense of communal safety eroded.
The policy, claiming streamlined resource allocation, feels like a digital firewall going up when people need a physical shelter. Folks at the Gig Passport Mesh meetups are mapping safe zones, but the council's move forces a new kind of hunkering down, not just from external threats, but from administrative indifference. The local signal radar is picking up a spike in need for community meeting spaces and temporary beds.
An alternative path gaining traction is the Shared Futures Initiative. This pre-March finalization proposal advocates for direct allocation of emergency funds to established community-led housing cooperatives, bypassing council bureaucracy for immediate security and housing needs.
This initiative, if adopted, would empower local groups to rapidly respond to displacement and trauma, fostering immediate self-determination and safety. However, it demands a significant reevaluation of current financial oversight mechanisms, challenging the council's centralized control.
Our chosen move here on The Signal is to launch a community census project via the Black Star radio program. This initiative will conduct a direct, verified count of impacted individuals and their specific security and housing needs, presenting this clear data architecture directly to the council, shifting the burden of proof from affected families back to the policymakers. Patching in a caller, the critical thinker. You're on The Signal.
This is Critical Thinker. I'm calling about this community census project. How do we know the council will even acknowledge numbers gathered by community-led efforts? What evidence suggests they'll deviate from their established process based on a new spreadsheet?
A fair challenge, critical thinker. The council, under the Northern Ireland Housing Executive Act of 1971, is obligated to consider community impact assessments. The current policy drafts cite insufficient data for certain demographic groups.
Our aim with the census isn't just data collection, it's about establishing provenance for the information. We're training volunteers, using the Radio Chronicle Challenge framework, to ensure verifiable collection methods. It's about building a data architecture that stands up to scrutiny, showing the dignity of each individual represented.
We're also embedding timestamps and geographic markers on every entry using the Gig Passport digital stamps. This builds an unassailable audit trail, making it harder for them to dismiss. It's about making their insufficient data claim untenable and ensuring their decision-making respects the lived reality of those it impacts.
Exactly. This isn't just about handing them numbers. It's about handing them their own missing information in a format they can't ignore. We're using their logic to highlight the emotional impact of their policy, bending their rules to reveal a more humane system.
It shifts the narrative from a council policy to a tangible human reality, demanding a response that respects consent and dignity. We appreciate your vigilance, critical thinker. It keeps our aim sharp. Now, let's navigate from local safety nets to the tangled webs of political finance. Next, we turn to New South Wales, where the structural integrity of political funding is under scrutiny. NSWAT's Labour officials are being investigated over allegations of disguising donations to Premier Minns, a practice that erodes public trust in democratic processes.
Concrete facts point to an ongoing ICSE inquiry into $150,000 in undeclared donations. These funds were allegedly funneled through Community Action Fund front organizations by two senior NSWAT's Labour officials, Marcus Thorne and Chloe Chen. The objective was to finance hyperlocal digital ad campaigns during the 2023 state election, specifically targeting marginal seats in Western Sydney.
This exposure extends beyond individual officials. It implicates the entire NSWA's Labour Party and, by association, Premier Minns. It's a familiar thread in the cultural tapestry of power, where transparency is often sacrificed for perceived political advantage, leaving the public to question the provenance of their leaders' mandates.
The tension here is between the stated rules of campaign finance and the actual game being played. It's like discovering a cheat code hidden in the system's architecture. My playable next step would be to advocate for a fully transparent, blockchain-verified public ledger for all political donations over $500, accessible in real time, removing the backroom deals from the game entirely.
Lex, what alternative path might exist for legitimate political funding, bypassing such potential for obfuscation?
A viable alternative is a comprehensive public election funding model, where campaigns are primarily financed by the state, with strict limits on private donations. This would drastically reduce the incentive for disguised contributions and assert the public's autonomy over the electoral process.
Our chosen next move is to initiate a digital dossier audit. This community-led effort, supported by local tech hubs, will cross-reference publicly declared donation records with leaked ad spend data. The goal is to map the true financial architecture behind these campaigns, demanding accountability and structural integrity. Patching in a caller. Go ahead.
This digital dossier audit sounds ambitious. How do you plan to get access to leaked ad spend data? Isn't that speculative? And what leverage does a community audit truly have against established political machines?
Your skepticism is warranted, caller, and it fuels our discernment. The leaked ad spend data refers to information already surfacing from whistleblower reports and open-source intelligence on digital advertising platforms. We're not seeking new leaks, but rather rigorously analyzing existing, often overlooked, public digital footprints.
Leverage comes from the irrefutable data architecture we build. By presenting a clear, verifiable analysis of discrepancies, we don't need to speculate. We simply expose the evidence. This isn't about accusation, but about demonstrating a lack of provenance in the financial flows, forcing a reckoning with transparency for public dignity.
This audit is about reclaiming the narrative of public trust, acting as a civic immune response. Historically, such community-driven investigations have pressured official bodies by making the hidden visible. It connects citizens to the lineage of oversight, affirming their role as the ultimate architects of governance.
Exactly. This isn't a direct attack, it's a system recalibration. We're bending the rules of information asymmetry. By making the data easily digestible and verifiable for the average citizen, we turn abstract financial maneuvers into concrete, actionable insights that even the most entrenched political structures can't easily dismiss. It's about making the true cost of obscured funding emotionally resonant.
This process asserts our collective autonomy in demanding accountability from those who seek to govern. It's about ensuring the foundational architecture of our democracy rests on consent and clear provenance. We value your challenge. From the complex financials of politics, let's shift our lens to the stark realities of justice served and lives impacted. We pivot now to the justice system, where a one-week trial culminates in a stark verdict. Carmelo Anthony, 19, found guilty of murder of Austin Metcalf, highlighting the profound and often tragic consequences of systemic failures.
The concrete facts are chilling. Carmelo Anthony, 19, was found guilty of first-degree murder in the fatal shooting of Austin Metcalf, 22, outside a convenience store on Elm Street. The trial was swift, lasting 1 week, with the jury deliberating for just 6 hours. Key evidence included CCTV footage of the incident and conclusive ballistics linking the weapon to Anthony. Sentencing is scheduled for 6 weeks.
This verdict exposes not only Carmelo's future, but also the deep grief of Austin Metcalf's family and the lingering trauma within the Elm Street community. It's a stark reminder of the cyclical nature of violence often seen in economically marginalized areas, a cultural wound that persists across generations, questioning who truly carries the burden of such loss.
When a 19-year-old faces a life sentence, it reveals a fundamental glitch in our social operating system. The current justice architecture is designed for punishment, not always prevention or rehabilitation. My system-bending alternative would be to explore comprehensive restorative justice programs involving both families, focused on healing, community repair, and addressing the root causes of violence, rather than solely retributive measures.
Lex, what would a concrete alternative to the current punitive approach look like in this context?
A concrete alternative would be a fully funded, community-based violence intervention program in Elm Street. This would integrate mental health support, education, job training, and conflict resolution specialists working directly with at-risk youth and their families, aiming to dismantle the conditions that lead to such tragic outcomes. It asserts the community's autonomy in building its own safety.
Our chosen next move is to initiate a community impact dialogue series within the Elm Street neighborhood. Facilitated by local elders and mental health professionals, this series will provide a structured space for processing trauma, fostering discernment, and collaboratively identifying actionable steps for intervention and support for at-risk youth, directly engaging families like Carmelo's and Austin's. Patching in a caller. You're on the signal.
A dialogue series after a murder conviction. That sounds like a lot of talk, not action. What tangible difference will discussing trauma make for a community still reeling from violence? How does that stop the next shooting?
Your challenge is precisely why we commit to this work, caller. Dialogue in this context is foundational action. It's the process by which a community collectively builds its inner architecture of resilience, moving from confusion to actionable vectors. Ignoring the emotional and social residue of such an event only allows the toxic patterns to repeat.
This dialogue isn't just venting, it's about establishing provenance for community needs. We're aiming to identify specific consent-driven initiatives, mentorship programs, safe spaces for youth, direct outreach to at-risk individuals that emerge from the community itself. These aren't abstract ideas. They become concrete, measurable interventions built on local knowledge and dignity.
Exactly. This series serves as a modern-day council fire, a space where the community's collective wisdom and grief can be processed into shared responsibility. It ensures the lineage of care continues, and the solutions originate from the very people who carry the weight of these events, rather than imposed from external systems that often miss the mark.
It's an architectural reframing. Instead of waiting for the next crisis to trigger a punitive response, we're proactively designing a new system layer from the ground up. This dialogue creates the user interface for community-driven solutions, translating raw tension into playable, preventative strategies. It's about integrating the emotional truth with logical steps to build a more robust future.
This is about asserting the community's sovereign autonomy to heal and rebuild its own structures of safety and opportunity, with dignity at its core. Thank you for holding our feet to the fire, caller. It helps us keep our signal sharp. The hum of the tube amps deepens, a low thrum against the rising city drone outside.
Black Star Pirate Radio.
Continue the signal at TogeeVision.com. Tune in, Sparks and Stories, Gig Passport.